Today we're going to talk about the infamous LJN. This is considered to be one of the worst video game companies of all time.
Every time this logo appears on a game, it's guaranteed to be ass.
LJN was founded in the 70s, first as LJN Toys, by founder Jack Friedman, and they mostly made action figures. He is also the creator of THQ and Jack's Pacific. The origin of LJN comes from saying Norman J. Lewis's initials backwards. Norman J. Lewis was a toy company that Jack worked for, and even the man himself, Norman J., supported LJN despite his company being technically competition now with LJN. Around the 80s, there was a company called MCA who was basically just buying a bunch of companies to try and profit off them, and one of those happened to be LJN, which was purchased for around $67 million. The reason that MCA chose LJN is because they had some pretty good merchandise for film IPs, so it seemed like a great company to buy. This is also around the time when LJN made their own video game console called the LJN Video Art. The name itself gives it away, is basically Microsoft Paint on a console. But it's a lot shittier than Microsoft Paint. There are also games though that were included with the console that were educational, and it had characters like Mickey Mouse somehow, and there was only one cartridge ever created for the video art, and that was Video Art Activity cartridge. That's literally the name. And on top of that, it was hard to even control the joystick itself. This also annoyed other people, so this is not an aging problem. There was the squeaking noise problem and the joystick issue, so that's why the video art only lasted 2 years and only had one cartridge ever created for it. There are no official sales, but I think that this is the worst selling console that I've talked about. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but I think it's obvious. I believe this has to be the worst console ever created. When the only game that's not even that interesting can only draw, and you can't even draw because the joystick doesn't work, that's when you know that you fucked up.
That's my best Spiral. That's my best person. I'm not joking around. The controls are so bad. That's the best I can do.
So after the video art was discontinued in 1987, LJN wanted to make games for another company, so they jumped with Nintendo. Some of the first games that they made actually are pretty familiar, including Karate Kid and Jaws. A year later in 1988, LJN purchased ALS. ALS is an Italian toy company that's family owned by the Fosse family. But of course, LJN was not doing well. Year after year, there were losses again and again and again. There was also a problem with one of LJN's divisions, which was Entertech, which was selling toy water guns. The issue that happened was that police accidentally killed children with these toy guns because they looked a lot like a real gun. I can tell why there were issues. This also explains why water guns are transparent and they look goofy with silly colors. Yeah, that really shined a lot of light. And the toy gun division was really important to LJN, and it really helped the company. So when that issue began rising for LJN, MCA's profits fell by 79% in the second quarter of 1987. So MCA was like, alright, we need to get rid of LJN, so they gave it to Acclaim. So there wasn't really much that changed for LJN. The only thing that Acclaim changed is that they took out LJN's entire toy division and just went to LJN to make video games. Now, because the NES was becoming insanely popular and tons of developers were trying to get their games on the NES, Nintendo had to limit the games that were going to be put on. They needed to put on only the best. So each company that was licensed with Nintendo had to have a limit on how many games they could put every year. So LJN went a little bit highlighter happy and began making a ton of games. And when they realized this happened, they were like, oh shit. And after a few other bad games, LJN sort of just vanished, and LJN wasn't really that seen anymore, and sort of just disappeared. In 2000 though, LJN's name did make an appearance on the Dreamcast for Spirit of Speed 1937, and then it went unnoticed. But 14 years later, Collector Vision Games actually got the LJN brand. That's basically it. So to conclude, as it appeared, LJN mostly focused on big IPs, and that's sort of how they profited, even though in the end they just died. Even if the games were flawed and people didn't really like them, as long as it had a popular brand, they believed that people were gonna buy it, and that's sort of what happened. But eventually that didn't help LJN, and now LJN's brother THQ is the more honored of the bunch. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Oh yeah, and PS, make a console that actually works.